How do I make this work? Do you know?
No.
Hello, is this working? No, it's not. Oh, there you go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Northcote. You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yes. If you have this direction. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so here's the lesson for the speakers. You have to hold it straight out in front of you to make the microphone work. Welcome everybody to the Northcote Climate Candidates Forum. Lovely to see everybody here. We are still waiting for our moderator who is lost, but she... There she is. She is coming. She is coming. but we will make a start because we don't want to be running late. So we will get through some of the formalities while Judy is arriving. I'd like to. So I'm Anne Sanson from Darebin Climate Action Now. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we're on the land of the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and acknowledge them as the traditional owners of this land. They've never ceded sovereignty. And I'd also like to note that we in DCAN are committed to working in partnership with the First Nations people as we seek a sustainable future. And here's Judy. Very few words, I'll keep it very short. This event is organised by the Darebin Climate Alliance, which began last year as a way of all the groups in Darebin who are concerned about the environment, about sustainability and about climate change, working together and thereby having louder voices, basically being more effective in what we do. DCAN, Darebin Climate Action Now, has taken the lead in organising this particular event, and as you may know, we've been working for close to 15 years now, working with all three levels of government to try to get emergency action on the climate crisis. Let's just get the housekeeping. This event will be being recorded, and we'll be making the recording available after the event. So please, can you make sure your phones are on silent? I haven't done that, but I will in a minute. And the other thing I'm supposed to tell you is where the toilets are, and I forgot to find that out, but they're out that way and to the left. Thank you. Out that way and to the left. So let me very quickly introduce you to the people that we have here. First of all, Judy Brett, Emeritus Professor in Politics at La Trobe University, and the author of multiple books, including the prize-winning biography of Alfred Deakin, and From Secret Ballot to Democracy Sausage, about our compulsory voting system. So she's a wonderful expert in this sort of democratic process that we're having tonight. We also have all 5 candidates for this election who do have climate policies, and that's wonderful. I'm very, very grateful to you all for coming. So Kath Theophanous, our sitting member, Kath Larkin from the Victorian Socialists, we'll get it right. Tim Oseckas from the Animal Justice Party, Campbell Gome from the Greens, and Adrian Whitehead, who's standing as an independent. So welcome to you all. And we're looking forward to a really educational, inspirational, and respectful evening tonight. I should just say one word that Campbell was an active member of DCAN up until the time he declared his candidature, and then he pulled back from that activity at that point in time. So I'd like now to hand over to Judy.
Yeah,
ballot, the order that people...
Yes, you do. Oh. And they're all in order, goes 1 to 5.
Oh, was that before or after the ballot?
That was after the ballot.
Okay. All right. And I must say, I think we're incredibly lucky we've got compulsory voting. I did a little interview for the BBC this morning where they were having a debate.
It's an ice cream. It's an ice cream. Hold it right in front of you.
Yeah. Oh, okay, is that better? Yeah. Where, you know, in England where they don't have compulsory voting, now they're having a debate on. So I felt, you know, I could run through all the benefits we have, you know, so we don't have this sense of a crisis in our democracy like certainly the UK and the US do at the moment. And so thank all the candidates for coming, which I think again, you know, shows what good health our democratic system's in. Okay, now, where's the bossy timekeeper? Good. Okay, right. Well, you know, the strict timekeeper. So the candidates get 5 minutes to speak each, and we'll run through that. So we'll start with Kath Theophanous, who's our current sitting member and a member of the ALP, a candidate for this election. Off you go, Kath.
I begin by acknowledging that we gather on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who have been custodians of these lands and waters for tens of thousands of years. And in doing so, I reaffirm the Labor government's unwavering commitment to walking alongside Aboriginal Victorians on the road to treaty. I'm standing for re-election in Northcote because fundamentally I believe we should leave the world better than we found it, and we have a duty to deliver security, equality and hope. Northcote is where I was born and raised. We are a proud, diverse community with progressive values, but we have challenges ahead of us. We need to tackle inequality and cost of living, invest in health and education, grow secure jobs, and deliver on reforms like treaty and universal kinder that will change people's lives. Critically, we must also secure a safe climate for today and the future. I believe the worst enemy of progress is cynicism, and I see far too much of that from minor parties whose purpose is more about undermining Labor than delivering impactful policy. Climate action has always been a priority for me. I have been proud to consistently use my voice in the Parliament, in the Labor Party and right here in our community to push for ambitious climate policy. And make no mistake, under Labor, Victoria has become a global leader in climate action. In 2014, Victoria's climate policy was a mess. Renewables provided just 10% of Victoria's energy generation. Matthew Guy had made it impossible to build a wind farm, and the Liberals had broken their promise by gutting the Climate Change Act. In just 8 years, we're turning that around. We've increased renewables to over 30% and we've smashed our 2020 emissions reductions targets. We've charted a path out of fossil gas, the first state to do so, and we've helped hundreds of thousands of Victorian households join the clean energy revolution. This election is a choice about what happens next. This election, we're putting forward the most ambitious 2035 target of any jurisdiction in the world. It well and truly aligns us with the Paris goal of keeping warming under 1.5 degrees. And we're bringing our net zero target forward to 2045 because the science is clear that nations like Australia need to lead. Labor will replace dirty privatised coal power with clean government-owned renewable energy by bringing back the State Electricity Commission. 95% renewable energy by 2035. This is huge. That we're in a position to be this ambitious is monumental and reflects the work of every single one of us in this room. And it's just the start. Labor is backing massive projects like offshore wind, investing in energy efficient homes, electrifying our transport system, delivering a circular economy that will divert 80% of waste from landfill by 2030. This is nothing short of a revolution in climate and energy. But this progress doesn't come by accident. It happens when we have strong and progressive Labor governments that knuckle down and do the work to transition our economy and vitally bring every single Victorian along with us. Everyone in this room wants to create a fairer society, a society where every single person can find a rewarding, dignified job and make ends meet. And that's why a just transition cannot be for some, it must be for all. And we need to support workers every step of the way as we phase out of coal. We need to help Victorians make their homes more energy efficient, and we need to help our communities cut emissions. As your MP, I'm proud of my track record in fighting for real climate action locally. I've worked on the ground on projects like a neighbourhood battery for Alphington. I've had big wins with DCAN on delivering completely gas-free social housing across Northcote and Preston, and we've supported urban farming and recycling, helped families and businesses go solar, and have acted to protect the Yarra riverfront. In the Parliament, I was proud to vote for ambitious renewable energy policies, ban fracking, overhaul recycling, and remove requirements for gas connections in homes. Our community is rightly passionate about climate action, and I'm proud to be part of a government leading on this with unprecedented speed. And unlike minor parties, we take responsibility to deliver. The alternative, of course, is the Liberal Party, who are not here but who still command vast support well beyond that of the minor parties in this room combined. Make no mistake, Conservative politics is a very real threat to the consensus we've built for climate action. Destabilising progressive Labor governments feeds right into their hands. It's very simple. Labor is getting on with building a more secure and sustainable state.
Okay, so now we've got Kath Larkin from the Victorian Socialists.
I too, is that working?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. I too want to acknowledge the traditional owners of this stolen land. The Victorian Socialists stand with First Nations people in their ongoing fight against racism, dispossession, deaths in custody and genocide. We just can't talk, I think, about saving the planet without acknowledging that the First Nations people who've been protecting this planet against the ravages of Australian capitalism since the very beginning. Why am I running? Because in Australia today, politics is rigged for the rich. The politicians of both major parties serve the billionaires who rape and pillage our planet while inequality grows. CEO salaries are up 40% while the planet burns and living standards for the rest of us are getting smashed. In Dan Andrews' Victoria, we see the destruction of our planet through the logging of native forests, gas drilling, attacks on environmental activists, and the relaxing of environmental protections. We see nurses, teachers, and other public sector workers who held everything together for us through the pandemic, which continues, having their pay effectively cut with the 1.5% wages cap, while the cost of living, while inflation is heading up ahead of 7%. The gross underfunding of public schools across Victoria, with spending less per student in government schools than any other state or territory. It's also the state which spends the least on public housing stock. Under the dubiously named Big Housing Bill, Labor is selling off public land to developers, knocking down public housing and replacing it with social housing, which offers tenants less protection and a net loss in bedrooms, which is particularly concerning given the huge number of people on the 80,000 strong public housing waitlist are families with children. It's pretty clear, I think, that we need a radical alternative, that we need to push back against this consensus that puts profit ahead of people. I think that means that the first and most urgent task of our generation is to redistribute wealth by taxing the rich and putting that money to work, saving the planet and building a society that works for everyone. As a young worker, the threat of climate change is real. Time and again, climate disasters show that it's workers and the poor who suffer the most. Forced to work in unsafe conditions, living in the most vulnerable accommodations, and left to rely on underfunded, degraded, and mostly volunteer public services. The protections of big gambling interests around the Flemington racecourse while people's homes were flooded is just the latest example of this. The destruction of the planet for profit, I think, is the most compelling reason to be a socialist. Our planet is warming at a terrifying rate. The oceans are rising. Ever greater numbers of species are put on the threatened and endangered list. We are hurtling towards a mass extinction event, and everybody knows it. Even, there might be crazed minority voices that argue it's not real. Even most people in the Liberal Party acknowledge that it's real. But what stops them from actually doing, what stops both major parties from doing what's needed to be done is the drive for profit. So what would we do if elected? Well, our upper house candidate, Jeremy Small, who stands a real chance of being elected to the upper house this election, is a long-time climate activist. He was part of the successful civil disobedience campaign that stopped the Jabiluka uranium mine. He's organised within the union movement to put environmental protection on the union agenda. He's organised blockades and pickets against mining corporations. In 2019, he was arrested at Blockade Imark and helped to lead the defence campaign against targeted environmental activists. So one thing we would do is actually a lot more of that. Think of the Franklin River, the Terania Creek, the Daintree, Kakadu National Park. All of these places have been saved by civil disobedience and mass protest. That's what we want more of. Being elected to Parliament, we can use the resources and platform of office to build the movements on the street that are necessary to bring justice in this country. And if elected, Jeremy would continue to work with these movements to provide a megaphone for these movements on the streets, and will continue to advocate for the complete nationalisation of the energy sector, not just add one government entity which partners with private capital and competes on the private market. As long as there is profit to be made of destroying the planet, we know that that will continue. So what we need to do is bring power entirely back into public hands, transition to 100% renewables, and we need to do this rapidly and justly. We know the technology is there, we know the public will is there, we just need the political will at the top.
Oseckas of the Animal Justice Party.
Hi everyone, my name is Oseckas and I'm the Animal Justice Party candidate for the Northcote district, and I'm proud to be running alongside Leah Horsfall, our candidate for the Upper House Northern Metropolitan Region. I also want to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, and we do support the self-determination and the empowerment of First Nations people. So I just want to start by saying that my professional background is in nursing. I was drawn to that profession because of the focus on caring and compassion. Soon after becoming a nurse, and driven by the same motivation to help others, I joined several organisations and campaigns to protect human rights, protect our environment, and protect other animals. Over the last 10 years, I've been involved in various forms of activism, focused on bringing attention to the brutal and unjust treatment of other animals in our society. During that time, there's been a growing number of people choosing to change their habits and lifestyles to reduce the impact on our environment and avoid supporting industries that cause needless harm to non-human animals. But more needs to be done to help them, which is why I'm standing as a candidate for the Animal Justice Party to represent all animals, our fellow members of the Earth community who cannot vote or advocate on their own behalf in our democracy. Victoria urgently needs laws that protect all animals from harm, and those laws need to be applied and enforced consistently across species without exemptions and exceptions. The Animal Justice Party is governed by 4 core values: kindness, equality, rationality, and non-violence. We apply these values across the board, not only on our policies on animals, but also on our policies focused on people and our planet. When we protect non-human animals, we benefit not only them, but immensely improve the lives of humans too. A kinder Victoria, with respect and non-violence towards all beings, is nurtured, will have benefits that flow through the lives of all Victorians and our environment. So in terms of the climate emergency, yes, I'm worried about that. Climate change is happening now. The scientists are telling us this, and we've all witnessed it ourselves, not only here in Victoria, but across the planet. Extreme weather events are occurring more frequently, causing massive fires and widespread rain and flooding. The oceans are also warming, and the glaciers and the polar ice caps are melting. Here in Victoria, we just had our wettest month on record. And according to the latest Climate of the Nation report, the majority of Australians are worried about climate change, with concerns over floods and fires at record high. Food crops are being destroyed, and supply chains are being disrupted, preventing some essential items, especially food, from reaching our supermarkets. And we're seeing a rise in the number of health problems associated with pollution, with climate change, including pollution from smoke, heat waves, and the spread of zoonotic diseases like Japanese encephalitis and possibly even COVID-19, as loss of habitat forces animals to migrate and potentially contact other animals and humans, spreading pathogens into new hosts. But climate change is not only affecting us. An estimated 3 billion animals died during the bushfires of 2019 and 20. That includes wild animals and many cows, sheep and other animals who died too, confined to paddocks and sheds, unable to escape the heat, the smoke and the fire. And they too have been affected by the recent floods. All this makes me very concerned, and I'm also very concerned that our current governments are not only delaying taking the urgent actions needed to address the climate emergency, but they're also still supporting the industries contributing most to the problem with subsidies costing taxpayers billions of dollars. The recent United Nations Environment Agency report found there is no credible pathway to 1.5 degrees in place, which means rapid transformations of society are needed to limit the worst impacts of the climate crisis. In Australia, animal agriculture is responsible for emitting more methane than any other source, including coal mining, the gas industry, and methane produced from waste. The Animal Justice Party is the only party with policies that comprehensively consider all sources of greenhouse gases, including the impact of animal agriculture and land clearing, and the need to urgently transition towards plant-based diets to address the climate crisis. When elected, Animal Justice Party candidates like Leah and myself will push for taking urgent action in the following ways to address the climate emergency. Firstly, we will declare a climate emergency and a biodiversity emergency. We will remove subsidies from the fossil fuel and animal agricultural industries in the interim and redirect funding into clean energy solutions and sustainable plant-based agriculture. We'll also commit to net zero emissions by 2035 at the very latest and support a 30% methane reduction target by 2030. There's a lot more points I'd like to cover, but I have limited time here, so if you want to read about our comprehensive climate emergency policy, you can read that on our website. Thank you.
We have Campbell, is it Gome?
It is, yeah.
Gome from the Greens.
Yep, hi everybody, I'm Campbell Gome, and I'll start by also echoing the acknowledgements that we are on the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and extending my respect to their elders past and present, and to any First Nations people here this evening. We know that there can be no climate justice, there can be no social justice, there can be no hope in this country until we learn to listen to, walk with, and learn from the First Nations people of this land. And that includes truth, treaty, and justice for First Nations people. I also wanted to thank DCAN for convening this forum this evening, and for all of your work and all of this community's work through the years to draw attention to the climate emergency. This community is one of the most progressive communities, Darebin and Northcote, in the country, and I think we hold dearly and we can rightly be proud of the leadership that the people of Darebin have taken to bring attention to the climate emergency and all that has followed from that. I would like to particularly acknowledge and share condolences with the family of Philip Sutton, a luminary in this space, somebody who I met in person just for the first time earlier this year, and yeah, his loss is felt by all of us. I want to talk a bit about myself and my motivation for standing in front of you today as the Greens candidate for Northcote in this state election. I was born in Footscray, and I've lived, worked and raised my family here on Wurundjeri land in Northcote for the last 25 years. Like a lot of Northcote locals, I come from a family of hard-working immigrants. My Jewish grandmother fled to Australia to escape the Holocaust. My Scottish grandma was a primary school teacher. She was the first person in our family to graduate from high school. I was raised by my dad, mum and stepfather, a Gundi Jamara elder. My parents and ancestors taught me the importance of working hard for what's right and of giving back to the community, of the need for everyone, especially those with privilege and power, to work together against oppression and injustice. And that's something I've tried to live by. It was in my young adulthood as a worker and unionist that I found my voice to call out and work to dismantle racism, homophobia and religious discrimination in the workplace, something I felt too ashamed to do as a child in the classroom. About 20 years ago, I became increasingly frustrated and concerned about the state of things and realised that individual actions were not enough in the face of the climate emergency. I wanted to do more to make the world a better place. I retrained as a teacher and I joined the Greens. As a teacher, I'm driven by a duty of care every day, a duty of care to the future generations. The future generations to me are the preps that I meet at the beginning of term 1 each year, and they are the year 12s that I farewell as young adults off into the world at the end of each year. 4 years ago, children around the world began organising and demonstrating and taking action. They were fighting for their future. They were my students, they were my daughters. Inspired by them, I realised it was time to set up. I've broadened and deepened my connections within our local community. I've organised and participated in multiple acts of peaceful direct action. I've walked into logging coops to stop the destruction of native forests. I've slept in tree sits 20 metres up in the air in solidarity with campaigners in Gippsland. I've demonstrated with Extinction Rebellion Darebin to call for the declaration of a climate emergency and for a rapid and just transition to renewables. I'm really proud to be part of this community. As all of you here today demonstrate, our community is one that cares. Our community acknowledges that we are in a climate emergency and that we need to act now. It's great to hear that that we're moving the Labor government towards taking action and that we're going to meet the Paris goals. The Paris goals are 7 years old. The Greens will deliver policies that will meet the increased need for action that was brought to our urgent attention in Glasgow far more recently than that. Together we can genuinely honour the experiences and wisdom of the First Nations people in this land. We've got lots more that we can do, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about that over the course of the evening. Thank you for your time.
We've got Adrian Whitehead, who's standing as an independent.
Yes. Hi. Do people mind if I sit? Is that all right? Last time I got COVID, I got that tiredness thing. I thought I was over it, and I went for a big cycle yesterday, and now I'm shattered. All right, so I'm Adrian. You've probably seen me before if you've been to these things. I run on the issue of the climate emergency, and the reason I'm doing it is because at the moment we are all going to die. Okay, and I don't mean that in some sort of funny, light-hearted, metaphorical sense. I mean that in an actual, literal sense. My children will be fighting each other for survival. They'll be fighting your children for survival in sometime in the next 30 years, right? That's how fast it's going to go down. So we are in collapse at the moment. The patterns of destruction that we are seeing accelerate, attacking basic infrastructure that's in our floodplains, our coastal areas, our food growing systems, etc., etc. Even the roads in my street from the extra water underneath are starting to bubble up and shatter, is the process of climate collapse, right? That will see a social collapse on a global scale. Now, of course, countries like ours that are a little bit better off and have got lots of, high-end paid infrastructure paid for through imperialism and everything that we know is all pretty nasty about where we've all come from, or most of us have come from, will last a little bit longer if our food systems hold up. But it may not be the case because, as we probably well know, a lot of our food systems are actually in the floodplain. So, who knows, we might go down early. Because when the food runs out, guess what? there ain't no bank you can go and get food from, okay? The system breaks down pretty quickly, and there's an old anarchist saying, I think if you deny a population 3 meals, you have, revolution or something like that. So this is where we're heading. Now, I just want to explain how bad it is, right? So, where don't we go beyond in climate change? What's the figure? Call it out. Anyone know? Is it 2? There's 1.5 actually. It gets really nasty after 1.5, okay? 2 is sort of like we are in the collapse and it's going a bit Mad Maxy probably by then. So we have so I spoke in somewhere up in Queensland at the council trying to convince them to declare emergency a few weeks ago. Professor Brendan Mackey from Griffith University, IPCC guy, there is 0.4 degrees in train already, right? So what temperature are we already at? We're at 1.1 plus 0.4 equals what? 1.5. So we're already at 1.5 in a real sense, right? Now, what you add on to that is the 0.8 degrees that are being reflected from all the pollution from the coal power plants. So you got 1.1 plus 0.4 plus 0.8. So where are we? About 2.234, somewhere in there. There's a little bit of fudge factor. So we're already over 2. So if I click my fingers today and shut down all those coal power plants, we get up to about 1.9, close to 2, and then we've got that 0.4 in. And now at the same time, there's all the feedback loops that aren't really taken into account in the models, like the melting of the North Pole and the oxidisation of the rainforests and the soils, etc., on a really big scale. So we are absolutely stuffed, right? Now, it is unlikely at this stage, based on the political rhetoric that I'm seeing here tonight, even from the guys who are relatively much better than the Labor Party, even if we implemented Kath's, net negative by 2040, and thanks very much to the Socialists for taking on a net negative target, because until we start to cool the planet, until we get a cooling, does the rate of impacts get better? No, they don't, right? They get worse and worse and worse, right? We have to cool the planet to not die, right? That means negative emissions on a massive scale, plus replacing the solar reflectivity of the pollution from the short-term cooling from the coal power plants. Now, one final thing, just as a bit of a motivator for the current sitting politicians. I went to Hungary on a climate tour as part of the tour just before the greatest big protest rally a few years ago. And in Hungary, they have a place called the House of Terror, I think. And when you go through the final exhibit, the words of it says, it has about 2,000 people's faces, and they are the members of the Nazi sort of special, the Nazi special police and the communist special police. And they say, we can never forgive or forget what these people did in their lives, no matter what they did before or after, because what they did to the people of Hungary is unforgivable. Today's politicians who sit on government, who are making the decisions to continue logging, to continue expanding offshore gas, to adopt suicidal targets, will be held account by my children's generation at some point, if there's a society left to do that. Thanks.
Okay, now we're moving to the next section where there's been 2 questions that have been submitted prior to the forum by DCAN members, and I'm going to put them sequentially, and each person's got a minute. So this is the first one. 2030 is too late to end native forest logging. Why can't it stop right now? Okay.
No, then there's another question, and you get a minute on the other question. So it's only one. Yeah, 1 minute.
3. I would love to end logging straight away, and I'm sure the minor parties will promise you that. What they don't tell you is that the 2030 end date was brought in by the Labor government against massive opposition. And what they won't say is that the Liberals and Nationals have made it absolutely clear that if they are elected, they will scrap our plan to end native logging And not only will they scrap it, but they'll reverse it. This Labor government, not any other, has banned old growth logging. Labor has put an end date on all native timber harvesting. Labor is making sure we transition those workers in those towns genuinely, because we know what redundancy really means for families. We've established the conservation regulator and are investing $120 million to build up a sustainable plantation industry. A strong local plantation industry is of course critical. Timber is a resource that will continue to need to build schools, homes, hospitals. Climate change is a global challenge and we have a responsibility to do our part right here, not push the problem onto other countries where we have no control over their environmental protections. In a short space of time, Labor has ensured that 94% of our state's forests are already protected right now.
Yeah, I really share the frustration that I saw on a lot of the faces in this room. Native forest logging can stop, and it must stop. One of the lies that's often told about why it's not stopped is that if we did, that we would have to rely on imports of unsustainable logging. This is just rubbish. 75% of our plantation forests goes overseas. You could reduce that by just 15% and you would meet our domestic needs. It's an absolute rubbish to say that we can't end native forest logging. And in fact, we absolutely need to. There are creatures that are going to be extinct. Yeah, I went on the Greater Glider ride with some of the people in this room on the weekend. These creatures are likely to be gone if we continue for another 8 years. It's absolutely criminal to be logging these forests, but particularly that the Labor government signed on to do so for another decade after the destruction of the bushfires.
Speed dating.
Yeah. Okay, so the Animal Justice Party recognises land clearing, including deforestation, not just as an animal welfare and animal rights issue, but as a biodiversity and climate change issue. Animals are injured and killed during tree felling, with many more dying afterwards from exposure, dehydration, starvation, increased predation and traffic. And as Kath was saying, I also joined the bike ride on the weekend. We were there focusing on the greater glider possums, but many other animals are also victims of these industries. Cutting out native forests is not only destroying precious carbon sinks, it's also releasing massive amounts of carbon gases into the atmosphere every year, around 3 million tonnes according to a new report released today by the Victorian Forest Alliance and the Tree Project. That report also shows that an immediate end to native forest logging could prevent a massive 14 million tonnes of carbon dioxide by 2030. For all these reasons, we support an immediate ban on native forest logging and support the transition of people employed in native forest logging towards a sustainable, eco-friendly industry, including ecotourism and plant-based agriculture.
We can stop native forest logging now, and we must stop native forest logging now. The WA Labor government has had the courage to do it. The Labor government here should have the courage to do exactly the same. But instead, we end up with our state-run logging agency, VicForest, which runs at a loss. Like we pay $20 million a year for them to log 3,000 hectares of forest every year. The report that Tim just referred to says that the impact of ending native forest logging now would equal taking 700,000 cars off the road every year. Instead, every time forest defenders, campaigners, protesters, people in this room are out doing the work of VicForests, every time VicForests are caught doing the wrong thing, the government changes the rules to make it easier for them to break the lax rules that are already in place for them, and now criminalising peaceful protests in the forest. We will end native forest logging in 2023 and will make laws to protect forests, not lock up defenders of the forests.
So I've been a forest campaigner since I was 16. I did my first arrestable forest action at 18, got arrested. Still have a criminal record because apparently no conviction sort of still means conviction. I got beaten unconscious in the Otway Forest with an axe handle and almost killed. But you didn't hear about that because at the time we were on a media black ban. But the bottom line was they could have stopped logging back when I was 16. They could have stopped logging when I was 18. They could have stopped logging in the 90s. We won the Otways campaign and we shut it down overnight. Well, it was an 8-year transition, but we kicked one big company out overnight, right? And it's just economics. You can shut it down, and these guys, the amount of damage and the amount of subsidies and the amount of lost water and the amount of species extinction, you could pay every logger 100K for the rest of their life, and it would be cheaper than actually keeping the thing going as it is, right?
Yeah.
So we can do it right now. There's no excuse. And I think didn't the Labor government buy out one of the mills that was about to shut down? So it's like literally kept the industry going. $10 a tonne carbon tax, kills the forest industry overnight. Simple as that. Yeah.
Let's say you're all doing very well keeping 1 minute. You've got another 1 minute now for this question. Do you regard gas as a transition fuel? Do you support new gas exploration, production and infrastructure?
We'll do it the same, so okay.
No, I support a transition out of fossil gas as well as coal. Our nation-leading gas substitution roadmap has set a clear path to reducing fossil gas usage, and we have world-leading targets to transition to renewable energy at rapid speed. Of course, the reality is that 2 million Victorian households and businesses still rely on fossil gas to heat their homes and cook their food. We're changing this by rapidly embracing electrification and reducing domestic gas usage. DCAN has been a really supportive partner in this. Together we've made tangible gains to the Energy Upgrades Program, our planning scheme and our big housing bill to get more homes off gas. Of course, today we still rely on coal for 60% of our electricity generation, and changing that is an absolute priority. That's why our plan to replace coal with government-owned renewable energy is so important. It's the single most important step we can take to bring down emissions and reduce power prices. Make no mistake, Labor will not leave families behind, because that's a surefire way to smash our support for climate action.
I mean, if you don't support gas extraction, perhaps there shouldn't have been the Labor government opening up new gas drilling projects along the Great Ocean Road. Gas is not a better alternative, and it's not a necessary one. Again, like the argument around forestry, it's just a lie to say that there's some energy shortage, that we need to keep doing this. In fact, again, the vast bulk of our energy, both gas and coal, is exported. We do not need to continue new gas drilling projects. We can stop this, and we can very rapidly transition. We have all of the technology to do so. In 2019, the owner of the West Australian Scarborough Gas Project, Woodside, paid CSIRO a lot of money, hoping that they would prove that gas was energy efficient. In fact, what they proved was the opposite. CSIRO's research found that the report concluded that the expansion of gas extraction would risk increasing gas and coal emissions, delaying energy transition here and in Asia.
Okay.
So the Animal Justice Party believes that fossil fuels, including natural gas, should not be part of any clean energy solution to climate change. We believe there should be no expansion of natural gas use, whether from coal seam or other sources, and the current natural gas use be rapidly phased out in favour of clean energy technologies to support the target of achieving net zero emissions by 2035 at the very latest.
Yeah, coal and gas are the leading causes of the climate crisis, and I support an immediate ban on any new coal or gas extraction. And I think the people here in Darebin, the people of Northcote, see through this misdirection from the Andrews government. We hear all about the announcements about taking the ban on fracking out of legislation and into the Constitution. Great, but we don't hear enough. And I think we see through. We see through, and we notice that at the same time, vast swathes of our land and waters are being opened up for more exploration and more extraction. There's no excuse for it. The Greens will reinstate the moratorium on onshore gas drilling, will ban new offshore gas drilling, will rule out future gas projects, including the Viva's terminal in Corio Bay. We'll get 1 million homes off gas over the next 6 years, and we'll establish a ban on connecting new homes to the gas network from 2025. We can do this, we just need to pick up the pace.
So, I just want to make 2 points. Back in 2005, thereabouts, I was a sustainable housing policy officer for all public housing and departments of human services, whatever, in Victoria. And I said to my boss, what the hell are we connecting all this public housing to gas for? And they said, gas is better. And I said, well, 1, it isn't, but 2, because you can go to 100% renewables and that solves that problem. But 2, you're going to encumber all of these public housing people with this annual gas bill for effectively a tiny amount of gas use, which would just be their cooking, maybe. And I said, well, and they're just building the international export ports on the east coast now. I said, as soon as they get built, the gas is going to go to international price parity, and they're screwed. And guess what happened? That's what happened. So here we were, and he goes, oh, we can't do it now. We've got to keep doing it because the minister's announced it. And I was like, oh my God, So anyway, point 2, beyond zero emissions. Everyone remember beyond zero emissions? If you haven't, look it up. It's the thing I started with Matt Wright. We did the stationary energy plan. If we implemented that plan back then, we would have been completely 100% renewables nationwide. It would have cost 30% more than the price we're paying now for electricity, and we would have been decoupled from gas. Right? We didn't do it. Now we're going to be paying 50% more, and we're at the slave to Putin. So there we go.
Okay. So now we're coming to the questions from the floor. Now the questions can be directed at 1 or 2 candidates only. That is, you're not allowed to ask global questions of everybody. And the person or persons who gets asked has 1 minute to respond. And there's a hand up already.
Jane, am I allowed to take the microphone? Yeah,
Yep.
I need the mic. From back and forth.
Great. I'm nice and loud. This was a question for the panel, so I might sort of let you all decide who wants to answer it.
You have to decide. Sorry, that's the rule.
Okay, sure. Campbell Gome. This question's for you. In 2020, our group, Community to Unlock Northcote Golf Course, tabled the largest ever petition at Darebin Council. Whilst recognising the biodiversity of the site, locals made the case that the space was a net emitter of nitrous greenhouse gases because of golf, and had the potential to be converted into a 24-hectare park for the whole community that focused on rewilding, bush kinders, creek protection, planting, and most importantly, the return of land to our traditional owners through co-management or full management of the space. Despite much lobbying over a number of years by the locals who live adjacent to the underused golf course, in 2020 Kath Theophanous sided with Golf Australia and went as far as to produce a last-minute $200,000 grant to Darebin Council on condition that Council kept 9-hole golf. This would result in the destruction of older trees to create a small, unserviced small park on the creek side of the course, putting native wildlife at risk, and it's something that the local community have not asked for or welcomed. What is your position on the future of this incredible space?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I quite liked Kat's first idea on the golf course, which was to keep revegetate along the creek bank and let a little bit of golf happen. That seemed like a reasonable kind of shared use option, and it was baffling to watch how quickly that fell apart. But we know that the golf lobby got heavily involved and heavily influenced the consultation that council took. I would love to see that start clean slate, start over again, consult with First Nations people, consult with users of the golf course, not the pile-on from around the country and around the world, and genuinely come up with something much more balanced, much more protective of the creeks and waterways, much more respectful of First Nations people's perspectives on that, and something that makes the golf course available genuinely and shareable for all who live in and can use it.
Okay. No, you can wait. You get a reply. You've got two. Everybody gets 2 minutes each.
The question was directed exactly at her.
Yeah, that's I know.
She'll be arrived.
So when's the right of reply?
Well, everybody gets 2 minutes at the end.
I
thought each question was to 2 candidates.
Well, it depends whether the person. But would you like? It can be done to 2 candidates. So if you're very quick.
No, I'm fine. Just Campbell's fine.
Great.
Okay,
now, the current Andrews government,
Who's your question?
my question is to Kath Theophanous. The current Andrews government claims that 94% of forests are protected. This 94% includes 1 million hectares of mallee. It doesn't include critical forests of the Central Highlands, where many threatened and endangered species live. The current government states that they have stopped old growth logging. All that has occurred is an administrative change in the way old growth is defined. This definition was devised by the logging industry themselves. I'll come to the question. This new definition of old growth logging enables logging to continue in important areas of old forest that are critical habitat for threatened species. Kath Theophanous, my question is for you. When will you and what will you do to prevent the imminent extinctions of species at grave risk due to logging?
Jane's got the microphone. She has to. You've only got one. You needed 2.
Thank you for the question. What I'll say is that right now, 5 out of 6 trees that are harvested are plantation, and we're working to make that 6 out of 6. And we have a plan to do that. It's a transition plan that takes into account a just transition for our workers that are in those industries, not in a glib way, but because we know that this actually affects families in a very tangible way. It takes time, yes, but it's worth noting that the parliamentary inquiry into ecosystem decline in Victoria found that the transition strikes the right balance between increasing the conservation of forests and providing time and support to successfully transition forestry to a more environmentally sustainable plantation-based supply. So I just want to be clear, I'll always be a voice within the Labor Party to transition the fraction of forestry that we have left that is native into plantation as soon as absolutely possible. And I'll do that in the knowledge that it will be a Labor government that implements that change, not any other, because we are fighting literally against the Conservative parties here, not against minor parties that by and large have fairly similar views, although maybe not quite at the end there.
Okay, another question. Guy in the middle there, would you stand up?
Hi, my question's for Campbell Gome. A number of you guys mentioned a report done by the Victorian Forestry Alliance, the same people that distributed this to, I think, well, lots of people's mailboxes and out the front here as well. It says that, let me get that right page here, that, pardon me, did you know that 80% of our native forests are pulp for paper products? Now, my question for you, Mr. Gome, is, do you know what the actual percentage of Victoria's forests are harvested annually, and do you also support the distribution of misinformation to harvest votes for the Greens?
There we are, 2 questions there.
Yeah, well, I see what you did there with the question, and I'm pretty sure everybody else did as well. 4%
4%?
4% of the forests that are logged, the 3,000 hectares a year of native forests that are logged, end up as sawn timber. That's all.
What's the actual amount of
The rest-
forests that are harvested, of Victoria's forests?
I don't have an answer for you.
Victoria's native forests, what's the percentage that are actually harvested? Because I think context is important.
I'll Google it. You can Google it. I don't. It's not a figure that I have at my fingertips.
You've asked the question. He said he doesn't know the answer.
Okay, good. You don't know the answer.
Okay.
So you do support
There was a second question.
Yeah, well, the second question was who you harvesting.
The distribution of
It was
misinformation.
It was a pun, the second question, I thought. Anyway, let's
my question's to Labour and Greens. I'm a plumber. I work in the gas industry servicing people's houses for maintenance. I constantly just hear, we're getting rid of gas, we're getting rid of all of that. That's all I've worked my whole life, that's all I've had training. You're saying in 5-10 years, go join Centrelink. You say that for forestry, you say that for coal. So what my question is, what are you doing to fairly transition existing workers in these key industries to new trade-related jobs that people from disadvantaged communities really use to get onto property lands and really build wealth that a lot of rich people just take for granted. They go to uni and get easy jobs. That's not something that poorer people get access to.
So you're asking
how are we going to transition existing workers and new workers?
Okay. Well, Campbell, you can go first, and then. And this is a question about the transition for workers in industries which are going to be, which people are putting pressure on the governments to phase out.
Yeah, it's a really important question. In the Latrobe Valley, we will support workers, we'll empower the Latrobe Valley through funding and authority to guarantee a job-for-job guarantee for workers in the Latrobe Valley as we make that necessary and challenging transition away from polluting energy production to renewables. We'll do the same for forest workers to make sure that they are supported and given opportunities to be part of the leading edge and the development of plantation timbers and all of the opportunities that creates, as well as things like protecting habitat, emergency relief, and so on and so forth. For plumbers like yourself, there will be a huge amount of work to be done as we make this transition, and that will support you through that and everything that comes after.
Okay. Thank you for the question. It is a really important one and warrants a significant answer. The Victorian Forestry Plan has around 200 million attached to it to support those workers through a very difficult transition for those communities and those families. It's comprehensive. At the same time, there are very significant transition plans for the Latrobe Valley from the state Labor government. And this is also about how we leverage new industries. So we know we're doing a lot in the renewable sector. We know that there can be transferable skills there, and so part of what Solar Victoria is doing is retraining for those industries in particular, where in particular plumbers and other sorts of industries, we are looking to retrain them into the renewable space. Yeah.
Hang on, sorry.
She's just saying the unions are good.
Oh, sorry. So there wasn't a question?
No.
Okay, right, okay. Okay, this person here, and then we've got one there. I just want to see how many more questions are there, so we can... So one... Oh.
How long do we have? till 8:15.
We've got till 8:15. Okay, so the person with the black mask on. You're trying to go one each side. Not that it's a wedding.
My question is to Kat and to Campbell. My question is about wood heating. They'll probably both know that this is the question that I'm putting out there. We know that wood heating contributes the largest source of PM2.5 pollution in Victoria, which is the most health-harming form of air pollution. It drives demand for approximately 5 million tonnes of firewood in Australia every year. And wood burning contributes to global warming through black carbon, methane and carbon monoxide. It also is costing the Victorian health system $8 billion in health costs over the next decade. Will your party commit to phasing out wood burning in our residential areas? Thank you.
Do you want to go first, Kath?
Thank you for the question, and honestly it's been an honour to get to know you over the last few years and to hear about your passion about this particular issue and how it's impacted your family as well. And I was grateful to be able to spend some time with you and our Minister for Energy, Environment and Climate Change at our mixer recently and hear you speaking to her on these issues. And I think that was really powerful, and she went away from that thinking about it deeply in a different kind of way. So thank you for your continued advocacy on this. Victoria has just released an air quality strategy. It has targets around it. In general, Victoria's air quality is good, but by world standards, but there's more to do, and in particular in our urban settings where we see wood heaters creating that smoke. It's a difficult one. I've got to say, it's a difficult one to shift people's perspective on, because still wood heaters are seen as this luxury item in a house, and there's not a lot of awareness in the general public about the public health impact of wood heater smoke. So I think there's a lot of work to do around educating people here, and that's included in the strategy that we've got now. There's also linked to that strategy specific areas of Melbourne that we know struggle with air quality, like the West, where we'll be putting money into implementing localised solutions, and it very well wood heater smoke is identified as, I think, one of 4 key reasons why we've got poor air quality in certain areas. So we'll be looking at it very closely off the back of our air quality strategy. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, and also thank you for your passion and your advocacy on this issue. And as an asthma sufferer, and where I've shared this with you, and something that's affected my children here in Northcote as well. Yeah, this is something that's really close to my heart. Both from the burning of gas indoors, we know the health impacts that has, and I completely know and understand that the impacts that wood burning is having as well. I've shared with you the Greens position on this, which is perhaps not everything that you're hoping for yet, but it is a big step in terms of reducing wood heating in metropolitan and large regional centres in particular. While trying to recognise recognise the reliance that some still have on it. Less so here in the city, to be honest. And I think Kat said rightly, it's a luxury item that people can do without here in the city.
Yeah, I'm trying to, not that people are sitting in ways, I'm trying to be sort of even, but I can't actually read people's. So I'll just take the person up the back there. I think they had their hand up quite a while ago.
I'm just going to, this is a question for Kat. I think this is a question only for Kat. I really can't square with, and I want you to square with, how the Labor government claims to be on a mission to reduce carbon emissions and still lift the moratorium on unconventional gas exploration. There is no need to explore for gas that we don't need. The exploration on its own.
Can you just ask the question? We don't need your views.
Okay, so I'd like to know what in fact you think you can do, and why can't you stop? Why did the Labor Party lift the moratorium on gas exploration? Okay.
I think generally people's views are clear from the questions.
Somewhat, yeah. Thank you for the question. We have a very clear plan about reducing our emissions and reaching net zero by 2045. It's world leading. It is literally world leading. No other jurisdiction is going as fast, as far as we are. And if every jurisdiction had the kind of plan that Victoria has right now, our world would not go over 1.5 degrees. That is a fact. But we also know that many homes still rely on gas, and the short-term gas production is declining more rapidly than gas use is falling. So we need to transition, but we need to do it without leaving people behind in the cold, because if we do that, we will lose the support that we need to continue our work on climate action. It's as simple as that.
I think we can probably fit in one more. This guy can get some gender balance here.
Hi, thank you for squeezing this in. Look, I'd like to thank all the candidates. I think it's fantastic and what you're raising about climate change and the facing of extinction. However, industrialisation and capitalism actually make some of us face extinction earlier because of industrial explosion. So my question is quite simple. We have a fire maintenance area in this city of Northcote, in the city of Darebin, and we have maintenance workers exposed to cancer-causing processes. We have presumptive legislation supported by the AMWU. Now, this is extinction now because of industrialisation in our society. So I would like to know, because this seat is being targeted by a certain union, what Kath and Adrian will say about presumptive legislation to protect the rights of the health and safety of mechanics in Fire Victoria.
I always would support the right for people to go to work and not get sick, not get injured and not die. So any legislation that's going to look after the workers and also rectify past wrongs through either deliberate criminal action effectively by corporations or just stupidity. So that would be my position.
I support the workers and the mechanics who work on fire grounds and who work with Fire Rescue Victoria. There is no difference between a firefighter who's working at one of those scenes and a mechanic who's working at one of those scenes. It's a disgrace what is happening right now with that campaign.
On my timesheet, I'd like to thank all the candidates for actually being so disciplined in their answers. I think that's really admirable, particularly Kath and Campbell, who have most fire directed at them. And Anne, I'm handing back to you now. Oh no, sorry, you're right. I've jumped ahead. Okay, sorry. We've now got closing statements, and I thought I'd start from the other end. So there's 2 minutes each.
2 minutes, thanks. So first of all, I wanted to acknowledge Philip Sutton. So Philip Sutton was a good friend of mine, and I wasted a year effectively not campaigning with Philip, focused on the federal election, and he died, I think, a week after the election was finished. And my top 6 lists of things were catch up with Philip and do this, this and this with Philip. So Philip was an excellent campaigner and a leader in the climate emergency space, a great thinker, and he's written templates for both the federal and state governments to implement the climate emergency response. So when you guys get round to deciding that you actually do want to save us, you can just pick up Philip's draft policy and off you go. So I just want to highlight, and sorry Kat, I don't really mean to be rude, but the climate literacy is very low, right, amongst the public in general, but also our politicians. Yeah. Kat said, if we do what Victoria's doing, we won't get to 1.5. But just can people remember what I said earlier? We have 0.4 in the bag already, right? We get to 1.5 unless, as an entire planet, we can reverse global warming. If we don't reverse global warming, like get a cooling, we get to 1.5. That's already in the bag, and there's another 0.8 being held off by reflective pollution from the coal-fired plants. So we are in dire trouble. And until we see everyone talking about emergency mobilisation to reverse global warming, we don't make it, right? So we need to see this on the green side. It's not new coal or gas, it's we support emergency mobilisation to save everyone, right? That's what we need to see on the green stuff. We need to see that in the socialist stuff. And eventually, if everyone sort of from this direction up does it, we might see it on the Labor stuff as well, okay? But we need that. So I encourage you at this election, vote for me one, right? Use your preferences, vote for the minor parties above the major parties, and make your decision finally between the 2 major parties, which is the Greens and Labor, and choose, not here, right? They're not here.
That's who we're supposed to be fighting.
Yeah, but they've already lost here, right? It's like, it's here, anyway, so, yeah, I've used up my time. Just remember Adrian, or think Adrian.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank first and foremost Darebin Climate Alliance and Darebin Climate Action Now for organising this event and for providing us with an opportunity to discuss these important issues with all of you. Thank you all for being here tonight, for your questions, for your interest, for your caring about the climate, and for making this a key factor in your decision on who to vote for this state election. And most of all, for everything you do in your lives to fight climate change. I'd also like to thank all the candidates present here for your contribution and the important conversation that we've had. Global heating, with its manifold consequences, is the challenge of our time. We simply can't sit it out. We need to act. We need to act decisively, effectively and fast. There is no time to waste. As a teacher, I see the future every day in front of me. They're the children that I teach. They are the adults of tomorrow. They are so much ahead of us when it comes to acknowledging what needs to be done. Future generations have the same right to witness and enjoy the immense beauty of this earth as we do. To me, that is worth everything. Yes. Some of you might wonder why to vote Green when we're not going to be forming government. This election is far from set. We might hold the balance of power in the next parliament, and even if we don't, we know that an increased presence of Greens MPs increases our ability to push government further and faster to be their progressive best. Not just on climate and environmental justice, but also on social and First Nations justice. And here in Northcote, we're in a very strong position. We have a path to victory here in Northcote. Fewer than 800 votes could turn Northcote green. The impact this will have on this progressive state, this progressive government's policies, is far bigger than electing another backbencher with their voice within the party with our Meet the Paris goals. We'll meet the Glasgow goals, and you can help make that happen. As I said earlier, we can build a better future, and I would love your vote in this important state election in this critical decade.
I just want to start by thanking the organisers for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight and speak to you all, and also to be part of this important community event. Also want to thank you all for your concern for the climate emergency that we're experiencing at the moment, and for all that you're doing already to address the problem. And I hope that the Animal Justice Party has your support at the election, so we can help change the system to better protect animals, people and the planet. As I mentioned earlier, the Animal Justice Party is very concerned about the impact climate change is having on animals, people and the planet we share. And we're the only political party with policies that comprehensively consider all sources of greenhouse gas emissions, including those coming from animal agriculture. So we need to urgently transition towards a plant-based diet to address the climate crisis. So in addition to our policy on the climate crisis, we've got other policies related to this on land clearing, land transport, human population and planning, marine animals, water management, energy and natural gas. You can check those all out on our website. Thank you.
Yes, a big thank you to DCAN for organising this forum, for organising it at every election. I actually think it's the best forum that happens during the election process, one of the most serious, and it's so wonderful to have so many advocates and activists in the room, because I don't agree with some of Kath's assertions that it will be the Labor government that deliver or bring changes that will protect our planet. Actually, history has shown us that all of the major advances for social justice, for environmental justice, for economic justice, come from movements from below. It's the work of the people who are locking on, who are blockading, who are picketing, who are striking, who are protesting. That is how we've won progressive change, and that's what Victorian Socialists stand for. We want to rebuild a fighting movement, a fighting working class politics that actually puts people before profit, that isn't a slave to big business, that doesn't say nice green words while actually still allowing for the destruction of the planet. We need urgent action that's going to turn that around. This election, I would love your vote. I think Campbell's really right, and Adrian's right when they talk about the value of preferential voting. You can vote for a minor party and send your votes on, and that vote continues to count. But in particular, I would urge you to consider voting Victorian Socialists in the upper house. Jerem Small is a long-term climate activist, a construction worker, a CFMEU member, someone who has fought for workers' rights, who's fought for workers in all sorts of industries, from retail, manufacturing, aged care, fighting against privatisation in that space. This is someone who can be counted on to stand up to the powerful and to be a voice for the oppressed, for the working class, and for our planet. So please think about voting for Jerem in the upper house this time.
Kath, I reckon you're talking about the Labor movement there. Transforming our society and economy is a massive job. It takes years of perseverance and policy refinement. It takes balance and careful consideration of our economy, employment, energy, security, social equality and environment. And as your MP for Northcote, I'm part of a Labor government that has demonstrated that we are global leaders when it comes to climate action. And from my very first speech in Parliament, I've worked to elevate the voices of our community and our deep commitment to protecting our climate, and we've had huge wins together. I'm part of a generation here in the Inner North that has grown up with these values, and I'm a progressive voice within the Labor Party. But I am not cynical, because I choose action and I have hope. As your MP for Northcote, I'll be part of a government that brings back the State Electricity Commission and delivers government-owned energy to together. I'll be part of a government that leads the world on climate change, and I'll make sure that we deliver every single day. We will dramatically ramp up renewables, build energy-efficient homes, transition industries off gas, set up neighbourhood batteries, invest in electric vehicles and infrastructure, get more cars off the road and protect our climate. Under Labor, we will run our state on renewables, bringing people with us and ensuring Victorians are not left behind. There's more work to do, and fast, including right here in the inner north. It's very easy to sit back and criticise, to promise the world and not deliver, to discount vulnerable communities, to impose marketing campaigns rather than joining a single policy committee of the Legislative Assembly. We cannot afford 4 years of instability and inaction or to degrade the consensus we've built on climate action by offering a secure, real and rapid transition. This November, choose to back the most progressive Labor government that this state has ever seen, that has consistently delivered to make our state stronger, fairer and more sustainable.
We've had some rousing speeches. It's nice to see a bit of old-style oratory. Yeah. Very good. Okay, now I hand back to Anne.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Judy, and my thanks also to the candidates for coming along tonight. I think that we are indeed very privileged to have so the candidates coming and giving us their time and have giving us this opportunity for this sort of dialogue. And thank you very much to Judy for putting up with the anxiety of getting lost on the way here and managing not only the speakers but also all of us in such a good way. My thanks also to some other people, to SPAN, and particularly to Julie for thanks to all the helpers from the Darebin Climate Alliance and from Darebin Climate Action Now for organising it, and particularly Karen Large, who's done a great deal of work on it. Also, when I started, I said that DCAN and the Darebin Climate Alliance works with all three levels of government, and I'm really pleased that we all three are in fact represented here. So we have Jed Carney, our member for Darebin, is with us.
That's okay, we know what you mean.
Sorry. So that's fantastic, and I think we have 3 Darebin councillors here too. Tom Hannon, Emily Demetriadis, there you are, and Tim Singh Lawrence. So it's great to have you here too, and for you to hear what the rest of the community is saying as well. So it's a two-way exchange, I think. So DCAN, as always, will be preparing scorecards, evaluating all the candidates' climate policies. Do look out for those, and if any of you would like to help us distribute that across the electorate, do come and talk to us at the end of tonight. And tonight will be useful in finalising those scorecards too. You will have seen a little flyer on your chairs about the next event we have, which is on Sunday, where we're working with a good car company trying to promote electric vehicles. If you want to find out about EVs or indeed buy one, come along to our event on Sunday or get engaged in the campaign over the next month. There's also a whole lot of information at the end of the hall there from various different groups with interesting material you might want to look at on your way out. And I think that's all that I need to say, other than thanks again to Adrian, Campbell, Tim, Kath and Kat, and also to Judy and to all of you for being here.